Hi, everybody, and thank you so very much for joining me this evening. I have loved being part of these webinar sessions, and tonight I will screen share with you because I'm going to be talking to you about power in play. So I am thrilled that Peak and, of course, the New South Wales Family Daycare Association has been really championing this topic because it's certainly one that we really need to delve a little deeper into. And so before we get going tonight, I would like to acknowledge country. I'm zooming in from Wurundjeri country, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia, pay my respects to Aboriginal and Xenodeth elders, past and present, and really acknowledge the land that you are on tonight to be able to join me for this session. So the artwork there is Sea Turtles by Gary Purchase. And I think that's one thing that we certainly need to do is champion our amazing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists when we are in our everyday lives and our working practice. So you can certainly go through the other webinars, and I'm sure you have, and this one will be added to the collection. You've also got access to the booklets that accompany the webinars. So I have certainly seen the final copy of the booklet for this session. So remember that you can always go back and access that for your own reference. So what did we learn from you? Let's have a bit of a look. For those of you that don't know me, why we're bringing up these graphs and having a quick look before we go through, I am Nicole Talarico. I'm not sure if I told you that at the beginning, but I've been in the education and care sector for 30 years, and I am very happy and privileged to be able to go into different organisations, services all across Australia, all different service types, including family daycare. So I'm really pleased to be with you tonight. For some of you that have not trained with me before, I am constantly trying to bring you new information, what I see out in the sector. And so when I get to do these sessions with you, I hope that you're able to take away some new insights. So speaking of that, how confident are you in supporting children hang on, I need to move that little icon there. Supporting children to understand and practice consent, body autonomy and respectful relationships during play. I think sometimes, particularly with consent, educators struggle at times to realise what that looks like for our youngest of citizens, 0 to 6-year-old children. So we will be talking about that because consent and body autonomy and respectful relationships is very much what this topic entails. I noticed that you're very confident, many of you, in being able to do that. So that's fantastic. For those of you that are not feeling as confident, don't worry. We're going to go through some things that will help bring that percentage a lot more into the red after this evening. How confident are you in redirecting aggressive and or unsafe behaviours while maintaining children's agency and dignity? I did note that many of you are very confident, which is great. Many of you are also somewhat confident, and sometimes I think probably you're doing, well, I don't doubt that you're doing an amazing job. Sometimes behaviours can present to us in quite a challenging way. And so we're going to talk very, very deeply at some point about the best ways that we can actually approach some of the imbalances that we see in children's play. So tonight we'll be talking very much about asymmetrical relations within the space, power dynamics in the space, because the social world really is complex. Us as adults are still navigating where we fit in, how we fit in, who and what we engage with on a daily basis brings up different emotions for us. And so we are going to be really using this platform to think about the developmental stages and the relational work that children undertake when they're with us and what our role in that can be to help them navigate pro-social experiences. Safe, we might be the only safe space that they have to learn different strategies for negotiating social relationships, and play is the best way for us to be able to broach that with children because it's relatable. Do you intentionally embed discussions about fairness, stereotypes, and respectful relationships in play-based learning? I was thrilled to see so many of you do. So that's amazing, because that's something that I think as professional educators, we stand up for children's rights as humans. And so there are often times where we really do need to embed into our teaching and learning fairness and what respect actually looks like. How often do you intentionally guide children to manage disappointment, accept no, and practice shared control during social interactions? I think I wasn't surprised to see perhaps our always is only, almost 50% there, because as a society, we do struggle with disappointment and the acceptance of no. And so I'm really pleased that we're going to be exploring that tonight, because it's so important that we do this work with children. So let's get going, because I'm conscious of our time together and we've got an amazing interview coming up. So just to let you know, we're going to go through some content and then we're going to have a look at the interview, and then don't leave after the interview, because we're going to come back and continue with a little bit more dialogue. So let's start with child-safe pedagogy. I think this really is the foundation for what we're talking about tonight. The National Quality Framework Child Safe Culture Guide has been released and provides useful tips and strategies to embed protective behaviours, safeguarding strategies. So if you haven't had a look, there's actually two guides, and you can see down there, there's the Child Safe Culture Guide and there's the Online Safety Guide. I've actually unpacked all 15 chapters in total that are included in those two guides. So if you haven't had a chance to go through that, you can absolutely contact me, because I've got a couple of webinars that can support you with getting that content and getting it streamlined for you. This includes, when we're talking about child safe pedagogy, this includes providing guidance to implement strength-based approaches in our work, trauma-informed approaches, so that we're supporting children's learning and development in all of their routines, transitions, and play throughout the whole day. For any of you that have not trained with me before, that's my book, Asserting a Culture of Child Safety. And so let's get moving. Power in play. Ultimately, children are consistently developing ideas and obviously attitudes. They naturally emerge through their social interactions. We as educators play a really vital role in guiding safe, respectful behaviours. And this is where we bring in some of those new terms in our early years learning framework, version 2. It talks to us about intentionality, working with intentionality. Thank goodness we got rid of, or we're not so much using intentional teaching, because that seems to suggest that there is a script and we teach it and that's the end of it. But really, when we're working with intentionality, we're looking for opportunities that we can bring to the forefront, some really important information for children in our curriculums. Attunement is also another term that we embraced, and attunement is where we are actually richly engaged with the children in our spaces, and we really get to almost know what's going on for them so that we can best support them in moments throughout their day. And that's really a key thing when we're looking at power in play. We've got to be attentive and we've got to be attuned to what's going on to individuals within our small group environments in family daycare. When we're creating environments, we're wanting to make sure that we are amplifying fairness, consent, body autonomy, and respectful relationships. And we have so many opportunities to actively explore those with intentionality throughout our everyday practice. So tonight we're going to look at how we can do all of this work through play-based learning. We can challenge stereotypes, redirect aggression, support shared control, and uphold each child's agency so that they really do feel and experience decision-making that's going to impact them in their everyday. Supporting children with managing disappointment, I already talked to you about, and we're going to really explore some strategies and tools that you can implement into your very unique settings and provide guidance using co-regulation and positive social and emotional modelling. So as I said earlier, the social world is really a very complex one. And I guess when we are attuned to what's going on for children, we pick up and almost predict sometimes what is likely to eventuate in the sequence of play. We can respond through knowing children's behaviours and actions and their body language. So this is the behavioural landscape I talk a lot about when I'm training with educators and mentoring. Behaviours and actions are evident. We get familiar with those, but we can also be really influential in being able to better support that complex relational process so that we can actually interject, if you like, and hold space for children when issues arise for them individually and within a group situation. Ideally, what we want to do is halt the play almost, because we've become aware of certain dialogue or we've noticed actions and behaviours. We can see in that behavioural landscape of children that things are not going as smoothly as perhaps individuals or the group planned. And so this is where we can really be so beneficial in showing children that there is an opportunity to stop and reflect on what's going on. So as I said, we're holding space and halting the play almost. And we often what happens is, and we're going to explore this, we jump in because ultimately we don't want children to feel uncomfortable in their space. But when we lean into this uncomfortableness, it gives us an opportunity to give children rich and rewarding insights into their interactions and those around them. So we're really talking about the impact on self and others, and that's really hard to get to understand. And so this is why we need to practice it over and over and over again in our environments with children, because we're hoping that we're building capacity of their social scripts that they have stored in their memory for when a situation arises again and again and again. And slowly, incrementally, they get better and better at recalling what has gone on before. I think ultimately at the end of it, what we want is for children to know, regardless, that they have a right to respectful and equitable relationships. And that's where we can lean in here to our National Quality Standard Quality Area 5, when we're looking at our relationships with children, and that we are absolutely doing everything that we can and continuously learning, improved ways to be able to do our professional roles. And this is where we are building our capacity to build and maintain sensitive but responsive relationships I love this quote by Anne Stonehouse. If we need convincing about the significance of relationships in children's lives, we need only to reflect on the importance of relationships in our own lives and our own learning. And like I said at the beginning, this is lifelong. So, power relations in preschool children's play. I know sometimes our sector is reluctant to use the word power, but I have sort of spent the last 2 years doing my master's in social work to blend my work with children and families in the education and care sector. And I guess I'm more inclined now to really proactively lean into that world, because power is everywhere. It is in every facet of our world. And by shying away from it, it means that we actually don't address and navigate situations the way that we could if we are reluctant to acknowledge that there is power in everything. I guess that means we're missing opportunities to be able to delve deep and expand our knowledge and understanding of the world that we live in. So children produce and negotiate social positions in play from the youngest of ages. You'll see, young babies that are exploring the environment around them. They are so eager to explore the environment. And we already see with the youngest of age groups that children start to like something, grab onto something. They can be really robust in wanting something and quite active in telling others around them, no, I've got this. So we see that powerful positions start to be claimed from the youngest of age. But what happens over time is that children construct, as they develop in stages, so does their language and understanding of the world around them. And the interactions with children and their peers becomes more extensive. And so you start to see more complexity occur in the play interrelationships between children and the resources. The narrative becomes more advanced. The intricacies of the use of resources becomes more significant and more expansive. And so we start to see social order start to occur within groups. Balancing that power game within interactions. And so you'll see throughout that I always would give you references to certain resources, and they are also going to be in your booklet and appear at the end of this PowerPoint. But I have found Cederborg's work quite interesting. A lot of research and study into power in play with children of all ages, but in this particular case, really talking about that claiming of powerful positions. The social order of play is what she talked about in some of her 2019 research. So we can actually refer to the term asymmetrical relations. And really what we mean by that is the governing of others. And ultimately, there are leaders, absolutely. There are people that drive play, absolutely. And we want that in this world, right? We want everybody to feel as though they can lead and champion things in their own right. When we're observing and noticing or even quite actively involved in play scenarios with children, what we see is play starts to build. And you start to see the sequences that occur. There might be give and receive and gather and sort. Doesn't matter what they're doing. They might be looking for pebbles in a shallow pond, or they might be in the cooking dramatic play area. They might be playing golf like the pictures you see here. But what you start to see is children engaging with each other in relation to the resources that they are utilising to support the play script or scenario. And it might be very basic or it might be quite extensive. Children tend to jointly co-construct status positions. So it might be that there might be a child that is more comfortable or familiar with a resource or feels quite confident to drive the ideas in the play. They may lay claim to certain roles. I'm going to be the teacher, you're going to be the person I'm teaching to play golf, or I'm going to be the mum, you're going to be the baby, and I'm going to cook you food. Whatever the scenario is, and you'll be able to think of so many, millions of scenarios in your spaces, you start to see significant language being used, and it might even be, quite improvised language. So acorns might be collected and they might be dinosaur food, or it might be that children are deciding what it is that they're cooking up. So you'll start to see key language come up in play, and it might be very true to the resources they're using, or we might see some level of animation and improvisation in there. When we're tuned to what's going on with a child, 2, 3, or larger groups, what we start to see is a shift in the way that the space is being maintained. And that can be in sequence with the story that's being told in the play scenario. But what you'll start to see often is a collaboration and a movement of certain resources within the space or spaces that are being used with the play. This is where we can move into a bit of what we can call legitimation of power. When the person that's driving the ideas or has more of them, or as I said earlier, is more familiar in the space, it might even be a peer that is older by stage or age, the playmate begins to utilize certain tools or resources in a certain way. And so what often happens is children want to either act and maintain their status in the play. And let's use the example of the person leading the play. They definitely want to often stay in that role of the decision maker and almost directing the script or the play that's occurring. Other children in that space will often think, yeah, this is going well. I'm liking the way this is panning out. Yep, this is okay. Yep, happy with your ideas, and position themselves comfortably into the play, being mindful that there is choice about the power here. I'm happy to be involved. I'm happy with the arrangement of resources and the people within it. However, sometimes children who are not driving and leading are just happy to be involved in the play. They might like the dinosaurs, or they may like this whole notion of I get to play a part. Sometimes, though, if we're not carefully attuned, and you'll know this from experience in your own spaces, that sometimes children will go along with the scenario, and it's really tricky to navigate for them in their stage of development when this is becoming too much, too intense. I'm no longer enjoying this. And often what will then happen is that they stay in the play. You often see this in areas such as block play. It can often be a very close, confined space. There's lots of big blocks moving everywhere. And before you know it, very rapidly, the play destructs, and it can result in some very upset individuals in that space. If we rewind that a little bit, what we actually sometimes can see is the sequence of play occurring. And we look at that, remember that behavioural landscape that I talked about earlier when we're attuned? We can start to tell by body language of children who might be paused in their space, or revealing certain emotions, or gravitating to some resources because they're losing control of their space in the play scenario. And if they want to stay in that space, particularly if the person driving it is really quite fixated on how things are going to go, it might actually indicate that they are happy to tolerate whatever goes about in the play. And sometimes they endure unpleasant and unfriendly treatment in the play. So educators noticing is essential. How the organisation of the play develops, the actions of the children. Whilst this is sometimes frustrating when play repeats itself, often that is the case because children are continuously challenging themselves and navigating the world around them. And when we recognise that this is constantly complex and dynamic, play shifts and changes regularly, and so does risk. Risk engaging in play is important, and it's a great learning curve because you start to realise that was great until it wasn't. And actually being able to develop agency and identity in play scenarios is really tricky, just like it is for us as adults. Social scenarios sometimes are really complex and tricky. So satisfactory and unappreciated behaviour and actions are often what gets experienced. You might see in a play scenario that continues to unfold and decline in cohesion, a little bit of exclusion of a participant. You might see alliances being formed. Sometimes that's with people that are happy to comply and are just happy to not make any important decisions in the play. But then what you start to notice sometimes is the instruction of others. No, you can't put those gum nuts in there. They have to go in here. No, you can't take those over there. If you're going, no, I'm having those. So you've got to, as an educator, start to view the play scene, if you like, and start to look at who is deciding the rules of the play. Is somebody or a group governing other peers and directing what possible actions are allowed in this play scenario? How certain things have to be performed, positioned, placed, and who has access to these? Because sometimes there'll be certain characters in the play, or we often talk about children as play actors in their scenarios. Who has access to certain things and who is controlling what's going on? So ownership of materials changes the positions of the ongoing play characters. So here comes our role again. We've shifted in active supervision to dynamic supervision. And I kind of coined this term back last year when we were talking about safeguarding in our early childhood environments. And the reason for that stemmed from my work in social work, where we were really constantly thinking about risk being dynamic. It changes all the time, and therefore safety must be recognised as something that also needs to be revisited all the time. And so I started to use this term in education and care sector, because dynamic supervision means that we're building on the foundations of active supervision. So you might have seen this CEQA poster that talks about setting up the environment, making sure that you can position yourself with a clear line view, scanning, counting, listening, anticipating behaviour, being able to engage and redirect. We still do all of that. We're not discarding that. But what we're actually recognising in dynamic supervision is the need to adapt in real time. And this is where that attunement and intentionality comes in. Changes in children's behaviour, their developmental needs, group dynamics, environments and routines. All of these things that occur throughout our everyday require dynamic supervision so that we can adapt in real time to what's going on in our settings. We're more readily available in dynamic supervision to diffuse unequal play. And that's why you'll keep seeing I've put the scales there. It's very difficult to keep the scales even. At points, they tilt. And that's okay. That is why we are doing this work, to engage with children, to work out and navigate ways to shift the scales. And we do that by offering, we lean in with curiosity. We're not leaning in with redirection, but not redirection in terms of reprimand or halting and stopping. We want to lean in with curiosity so that we can halt the play with holding space to explore and navigate alternate possibilities that the children or the child may not have realized was possible. And we do this because we want to support felt safety. We want to help children in negotiating people, resources in place. And, this is not new, because I've referenced here an image that comes right back to the 1800s, 1897, in fact. And any of you that have heard of the playwork theory, it came about after World War II, where children were playing in remnants after the war. And the key things I wanted to bring reference to here is that one of the playwork theory principles is to ensure that the broadest possible range of play types can be engaged in and accessed by children. And the idea is that we as educators continuously observe, reflect in the moment, analyse the play that is happening, and then decide, select a mode of intervention, or suggest possible changes to the play space that broaden the opportunities for children and hopefully balance out those scales a little bit. So we can influence empathy, because quite often in our work, children are marginalised and others are privileged. And that, yes, can be in life, but when we're actually talking about play scenarios with resources, we also can recognise that marginalisation and privilege occurs in play. This is how children act out what they know, how they pose theories to themselves and each other, and they act out on those theories. And that's where we come in, where we can expand the knowledge of what they know to produce more theory making. Children create, as I mentioned earlier, a hierarchical order when organising free play spaces and the resources within them. They co-construct the activities together. They make meaning out of the play. They create identities, some stronger than others, and values together with their peers. I guess what we're doing is recognising and championing this. This is their opportunity to practice real world stuff in a safe, secure, supported environment. And peer responsiveness is something that we're starting in our sector just lean more and more into. We've got child safety and safeguarding with that whole inclusive element of wellbeing. Felt safety requires that emotional, psychosocial, social, physical, all of those types of, we've got cultural wellbeing and we've got spiritual wellbeing. There are so many different influences that allow us to feel safe in our spaces. And so we can actually, we do have a really powerful position here to be able to help leverage subordinate positions. Children sometimes don't have the skill or the stage of development or the language or the confidence to be able to act and utilise their agency in play. And that's where I keep mentioning we come in. So, a perfect example, and I'm always talking about using our existing resources and use a lens or filter them and expand them with some of the content that we're talking about. So, when we're leaning in with curiosity, if we take the book The Tiger Who Came to Tea as an example, what we can actually do there is lean in with curiosity about how do, and I'm sure all of you know this story, it was my favorite when I was growing up, but interesting, it gives us so many opportunities to reflect on and be curious about how other people might be feeling in the space. How is the mother feeling? How is the child feeling when the tiger takes over, exerts power in their space, and doesn't think about what they need or what they want, just completely rips through their apartment? And I guess this is a really, it's an opportunity for us to be able to talk about how we feel when people are doing and acting and saying things that make us feel a little bit uncomfortable. So when we're leaning into curiosity in children's play experiences, we can actually recall moments that we've shared when we've expanded storylines out to talk about things like power and control and people's feelings and emotions. When we are leaning in with that curiosity, and I mentioned earlier about trying to almost halt and hold space in the play scenario, ultimately what we're wanting to do is come in very neutrally. Our behavioral landscape makes a massive difference. So when we are coming in feeling quite abrupt because we've noticed some really unfair behavior, we've got to actually reflect in on what's going on for us first. So one of the best strategies you can do is to actually do a quick reflect and check in on what your behavioral landscape looks like. You might be frustrated because we've gone over this and over this and over this, and these resources or this play keeps playing out. But I honestly encourage you to try and neutralize your behavioral landscape as often as neutrally as possible, because when we are giving a soft, non-judgmental landscape, it allows us to enter that play in a way that the players or the children are going to be more responsive to the interjection. We want to position ourselves strategically. So quite often, if I take the example of an outdoor play kitchen, there is often a tree stump or a seat or something that I can sit in. So I want to actually try and get, and we know this, get down to children's level as often as possible, particularly when we're wanting to diffuse unequal power play. So we want to actually check in on our behavioral landscape, look as calm and smiley and neutrally enter that play, but position ourselves where we're actually not overpowering, because we're not intending to do that. We want to position ourselves strategically to be able to say, hey, I'm curious. And when we come in with hey people, rather than using children's names, because often at a quick alert, we might go, Mary, remember, remember we agreed? We want to actually come in really neutrally. Hey guys, hey people. So we're not actually calling anyone out. We want everybody to stay open and responsive to what comes next. So when we go in with curiosity, I've noticed, I just heard you guys talking about, I wonder, so we're using the opportunity to lean in with curiosity and re-script, if you like, or give children an opportunity to hear what it is that we're putting on the table. I heard that we can't take the gum nuts over to the wheelbarrows. We've got plenty of gum nuts. Would it be okay to be able to, or could we go and get some more? So sometimes we're giving options for alternate possibilities. So we really need to be quite use intentionality with our resources, because we want to have ample resources. Yes, we also can work to, if we're thinking about, gender equality and stereotypical roles that children, everybody comes in with bias. They do, from our own upbringing, families, values. Everybody comes in with certain values, attitudes, and even bias. And so we can actually give children that safe, secure environment to explore alternatives. It might be, I was in a centre, I was in one today actually, and I heard children saying, no, I'm the cat. You have to feed me with that. To be able to, and it was easy because I was adjacent to the play, to be able to actually go, oh, I love cats, alerted children to this possibility. And I said, oh, the more cats, the better. It diffused the child that was actually instigating that she could be the only cat in the play. By hearing an alternate opinion or possibility, before you know it, we were able to have more than one mat and more than one jar of cat food. And so being quite intentional with the volume of resources or what you say, it also gives us an opportunity to challenge certain stereotypes. So it might be, for instance, it might be that a group of children are playing in the home corner area and they say, no, you be the dad, you go to work. Or I'll stay home and so it might be that you then position yourself at their table and talk about the different roles that we have and what different family dynamics look like and the equality that we can offer children through different professions. And that might be we gain other resources to support this language and dialogue. So really what we're doing is expanding the narrative to explore beliefs and alternate ways of understanding the world. I guess the other thing that is really important for us to recognise, if we're thinking about felt safety and safe environments, yes, we can have all the ambition in the world to be really attuned to what's going on, but sometimes children may need to raise concerns and we're not in awareness of that. So what we can have is multimodal ways, not just language, to be able to raise concerns. And we can support this in our programs. So these are I need help buttons. Some of them you can get online where you can record different messages. I know I do some work with Gowrie Victoria and Gowrie New South Wales, and they've both got these implemented into their programs. Gowrie Victoria, at one of their services, actually have recorded I need help, or on another one, I need a friend, so that you can actually utilise these tools to give children an opportunity to gain access to help by a peer or an adult, so that they don't just have to rely on their own language. And that's important because when children sometimes go beyond their window of capacity, their prefrontal cortex shuts off and it's really hard to get the language and the words out and remember what to say and who to go to. So sometimes visuals in our space support children to remember and recall and gain confidence to do that. We've also got, other amazing opportunities to embed other resources for help seeking and raising concerns. And this is what we want to, I guess, advance in our education and care sector for wellbeing. There is nothing wrong with saying I need a little help, or I need a friend, or I'm really struggling with this, or I'm unhappy about this. So what makes you do that is a really lovely book that talks about actions and possibilities for why somebody might behave and react in a certain way. This encourages children to self-reflect and reflect collaboratively amongst their peers as their growth, learning and development moves in stages. So we're collaboratively considering how actions affect others. And that's where our role comes in when we're intervening and holding space in play. Sometimes we're actually thinking about the behavioural landscape of others. Sometimes, children do play with blinkers on. And so we're actually bringing to the attention something they might not have realised. Yeah, I don't know, because I came over because I noticed some people looked like they had a bit of a sad face on, or they were sitting there with not much to do. I wonder whether you had some ideas about what else they could do, or what would you guys ultimately feel like would be an important role for you. So we're actually giving each person in the play an opportunity to feel supported in saying what it is that they would like. And often the leading person in the play is quite happy to hear alternate suggestions. It just, that holding space in the moment and halting the play can actually be quite pivotal before it gets to the point where negotiation has well and truly gone well and beyond. So we're helping children to manage their own body cues, recognise what's going on for them, feelings, emotions, and that of the other people around them. So this example is acorns under the outdoor table. It was from some research I was looking at, and it was talking about a child called Dora. And Dora had collected a whole lot of acorns and positioned them under an outdoor table. As the sequence of play built, some children decided that, the acorns looked great, and they would take some of them and move them to another area without Dora's permission. She was the one that found these acorns. So the educator that was observing this play noticed Dora giving a reprimand. If you don't bring them back, you're not playing. If you don't bring them back, I'm not going to, blah, blah, blah. Making an alliance with the people that remained attentive to the play idea. There was some showing of non-verbal disapproval and giving permission to people that were not ruffling the feathers in the play, or the acorns, if you like. Ignoring a peer. So once that child decided to come back, because often they will, because they really do want to be part of the play sequence, ignoring that peer because they weren't following suit with the trajectory of the play. What was observed next was the criticizing of the size of the acorn. Your acorn's smaller, so you can have that one anyway. That child goes and collects independently. Then there was some gifting of acorns. I'll give you some, I'll give you some, I'll give you some, showing appreciation. We started to see a lot of power transformation amongst the peers in the group. This child then, who had been excluded from the play and then given small acorns, had come back in with a huge volume of acorns that they'd accessed from another area of the play setting. And of course, that really disrupted that whole rules, sequence, resources, who was doing what the roles were, what the identities were in that play. Instantly, that child had decided that they were going to bring in a huge volume of what was going to be the most exciting key resource in this space. The thing is that can either work or not work. And ultimately, what we also want to do is think about and be attuned to why that child is wanting to re-enter the play. What's the thought process been for that child to come in and show that they're worthy of being part of the play scenario? So if we can come in and attune and even halt some of those moments, we can actually build up that child's agency to recognize that they have rights to resources. They don't have to prove themselves to others, whilst at the same time, we have an opportunity to talk about how useful a greater volume of resources would be, and that exclusion of a peer group is not something that feels great, It's not fair play. So we can use all of these words to give children exposure to play scenarios that are unfair, that power is not distributed easily, and what strategies we notice children using to try and rebuild their status in the play. So this is where, and at the same time, it gives us an opportunity to also check in with those that are still playing along with the scenario, looking at the behavioural landscape, looking at how that power and control is not being protested. Are they happy, or are they working under these conditions for what reason? So we're looking at children who are exercising power in play, withdrawing from play, and coming back into play. All of these give us perfect opportunities to explore the power dynamics in what's going on in our settings. Now, as I said earlier, sometimes children do not have the social language or stage of development to be able to have their voice heard, and sometimes they absolutely do need help with writing some of these social scripts. So this is where we do need to really cue in to some of the non-verbal responses and feedback that children are giving us in their space. We need to be really readily available, accessible, interested and attuned. We want to think about how we can respond respectfully to encourage children to question and share their thoughts and ideas so that we can build individual agency. We're always communicating our ability and availability to help explore a situation. Would you be okay if I could give a suggestion? Or I've got an idea. Would you guys be interested in hearing it? Or Jimmy, have you got any ideas on this? So we can actually utilize each other's strengths with, and this is where that consent and respectful negotiation comes in. Are you okay with me giving you an idea? Because I've got one. So we're really looking at interactions and managing feelings, looking behind actions to figure out needs, and multimodal ways to do this with visuals like the I need help button, or visual images to help children and support them in navigating what they want and when they need help to script their play. So educators, we know, can be a mediator, a narrator. I think when we're offering closeness, support and help, when children are showing those strong emotions, we have an opportunity to share our calmer, safe nervous system to them, to be readily available, helping children to negotiate their rights and their boundaries, consider the rights of others, looking for and asking for consent. And when they hear you do that all the time, it gives them those social scripts to rely on and remember. So this is where we come in, promoting social justice and advancing equity, where we're trying to see what individuals need to make their experience joyful so they can each thrive in the space. So now we've got an amazing video. Remember, don't go anywhere. I am conscious of time, but we're going to have a little bit of time at the end to go through a few other key things before we finish up tonight. And I would like to officially, now that we are recording, welcome you, Joss, and thank you for your time and dedication to your profession as a family daycare educator. Can I just ask, for the sake of the audience that watches this, if you can just give us a little spiel about where you're based and what your professional life looks like?
Yeah, sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Joss. I'm living, working and learning on Wiradjuri country in beautiful Dubbo, New South Wales. I've been in family daycare for 6 years. And prior to that, I was in preschool and government education roles as well with early childhood. So early childhood is my niche space. It's my passion. So yeah, it's lovely to have the opportunity to connect with other educators this way.
Fantastic. And so, as I mentioned to you before we pushed record, there's an up and coming session that I'll be delivering. from my home, but it'll be a live webinar. I'm on Wurundjeri country too. And what I wanted to just kind of set the scene is to just give a quick overview of what we're going to be looking at in that session. So it's called The Power in Play. And the idea is that we have such a critical role as educators in the interactions and the environments that we co-create, I guess, with children. And the particular focus for this webinar will be looking at some of those interactions that we see children having where there are perhaps big emotions, or there might be some challenges negotiating space, equipment, and even each other in terms of who can play particular, play with particular resources or play certain games depending on what the context is. But I have a few questions that I'm hoping that you don't mind answering for me, Joss. The first one that I'm curious to know about in your space is how you teach children about respectful leadership in terms of looking at opportunities, I guess, that you have for fairness, to teach children so they can learn about empathy and to partake in shared decision making. What does that look like for you? How do you do that?
Yeah, so that's a really great one, because that comes straight into our outcomes 1 and 2 in the early years learning framework. And a big part of that, when you read through it, it's all about collaboration. So it's easy to go, oh, leadership, we're looking for somebody to take charge. That's actually not the type of leadership that we're trying to guide children into. So the leadership styles that we want are, they're inviting the perspectives of others. They're willing to listen to others, to use that shared decision making. So as an educator, what our role is scaffolding the language so that kids learn how to do that. Because through play is the way children first start to learn how to use power, what power is, how they can wield it. And that's when we see the different personalities come out. We'll see our lion children that are out the front, and they're loud and proud and ready to go. And we also have our lambs that are, that they tend to be back and need a little bit of encouragement to come forward. And I think there for a while it used to be, oh, well, that's just them, they're going to be quiet. But giving everybody a voice and showing everybody that we value them equally is bringing everybody together so they're all collaborating in that process.
Yeah, I love it that you talk about the collaborative nature, this relational pedagogy, which is what we often talk about, for children's safety, for children's well-being, for joy, so people can thrive in environments. I love that you mention that, I guess we did, didn't we? We used to go, oh, that's just their nature. But I think when we're looking at trying to steady the scales almost, we have a commitment, don't we, to help children and support children, whether it be language or role modeling. And I think, what I've been saying a lot to educators of late is that even that being present, that attunement that you have when you are with children, it means that we actually notice and we stay engaged long enough to actually hear and see when somebody might need a little bit of assistance, right?
Yeah, that's it. And when you need to step in with those words to support them to put forward their own opinions and get that little bit of assertiveness and confidence to be able to interact with their friends when they don't necessarily agree with one another.
Absolutely. And I love it that you talked about, being able to see when you might need to step in, because sometimes it's just having that that lifeline, that support, or what we talk about in the co-regulating, isn't it? Where
Yep.
we're actually sharing our calm nervous system, our presence to be able to say, hey, I'm here to be able to help you with the skills to not only facilitate what you are trying to address, but I like it that you initially talked about the fact that sometimes children that are really confident in the space or very, very familiar with the resources in the space, and they tend to have a bigger personality, to be able to also support them to see the
Yeah.
impact that
Yeah.
they're having on the environment and the group and themselves. Because sometimes I don't know about you, but I sometimes, when I'm watching children interact, sometimes it is those confident children that all of a sudden the play runs away from them and they've lost half of their mates.
Yeah.
And so it's almost as if sometimes they needed that support to go, hang on, to be able to stay engaging in this, which is clearly what you want to do. Perhaps we need to have a bit of an intervention here with an educator that can offer that, that shared decision making.
Yeah,
It,
definitely. And I think there is a lot of overlap with the themes of dominance in
mm,
play,
mm-hmm.
um, because yeah, that can come very naturally to some children, and learning empathy, learning to consider the perspectives of others, that's something that needs to be taught. Because as we know, right from our toddlers, they love a bit of power. So if they're not channeled to use their power for good, it's
Mm,
that's when the play can become very, very disorganized and very dysregulated, and suddenly you have a group of very unhappy little people,
yes.
and yeah,
Everybody. Yeah.
you've got to
Yeah.
try and bring it back. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah,
hard
but
to
at the
bring it
same
back.
time, like, it is. And I think one of the things as an educator that I guess you learn through experience is that conflict is okay, because conflict is actually a teaching opportunity. So that's when children are going to be most receptive, because they have a problem and they want your support as to how to solve it effectively. So if left to their own devices, that's when things fall apart, because they don't have the tools yet. They don't have the life experience that we as educators have to be
Yeah.
able to come in with that cool, calm,
Yeah.
collected
Yeah.
approach and
Uh-huh.
go, well, this is what I can see is happening. I can see that
Yes.
you both have very different ideas, and it doesn't seem like you're able to listen to one another. And so both kids will just simmer down and go, oh, okay, so there is going to be a way forward that we can continue our play. We've just got to get over this hurdle. It's not the end of the world anymore.
Absolutely. So that's a beautiful lead into my next question, then, which you've started to answer for me, which I thank you. What are some of those indicators then when you are present in the space with the children at your family daycare home? What are some of the things that indicate to you that, yeah, that's actually constructive leadership that's happening in the play? And when do you start to realize, or what are some of the indicators that tell you that there looks like there could be a little bit of dominance and acting out
Yeah.
here in the sequence?
Yeah, so when I'm seeing effective leadership, I'm hearing there might be one lead child, but there might be assigning roles. There's a lot of other inputs that are taken into the play scenario from the other children. The
Yes.
other children are heard and listened to, and the play can evolve from the original idea of the instigator or the lead child. Versus when you're starting to see dominance in the play, that's when you have the lead child saying, no, that's not how we're doing this. You need to do X, Y, Z. Or and then they're not listening to the ideas of their peers. They're
Yeah.
just they're steering this ship, and
Yeah.
this is their show.
Like with the blinkers on, isn't it? And
That's it. And
I'm starting to think about too in that moment where, you know, there might be some children that are not being heard or they don't have the language to be
yeah,
able to they might not have the confidence or the language to be able to voice their opinions. So would you be relying on the other, what I call the environment, the behavioral landscape, what the body language is telling you, what the facial expressions are telling you, to be able to make a little bit of an assessment as to whether or not everybody seems happy with the way the flow of this play is going, or whether something's telling you, I don't think that they're overly keen on the way this is going.
yeah. So you can often observe with the kids that start to disengage because they're not being heard. All of a
Mm,
sudden, instead of it being a collaborative play scenario, it starts becoming like back a step to that onlooker play. So they're
yeah,
not actually engaging anymore. They're standing and watching what the lead child is doing because they don't have a part to play anymore.
yeah,
And
yeah.
the other thing, like with family daycare, it can be very tricky because you've got such a multi-age
Mm,
grouping.
yes,
And that's where it becomes really tricky for educators because you have little ones trying to play with the big kids, but they don't have the language to pull up the big kid and say, hey, I'm here,
yeah,
give me a go. I've got
yeah,
ideas. I just want you to listen to me.
yeah,
So
yeah.
for me, a big red flag for play is if it's too quiet. If I'm
Yes.
on, yeah, if I'm only hearing one child, or it's
Mm-hmm.
been busy and then all of a sudden it goes
Yeah,
quiet, that's a red
yeah,
flag for me that we have kids
absolutely.
sitting on the sidelines not being heard. So that's
Yes.
when
Because that buzzer play
yeah,
is using materials or talking, or there is just this
yeah,
hive of activity, isn't there? And when that
yeah,
becomes stagnant, there is
yeah.
possibly something to invest your attention into. I totally understand what you're talking about there. And so tell me, if there is the conflict that has arisen, I'm going to that scenario now.
Yep.
I'm curious because you do have so many different stages of development often in a family daycare residence, don't you? And so when you've got some children that will just not have the ability to sustain that play,
Yep.
or they don't have the the regulation skills to be able to deal with disappointment through that play, or they start to get frustrated. And so if you're hearing yelling or children crying, or you know, when that play has peaked to the point where somebody is clearly upset or dysregulated, what are some strategies that you could share with us, if you can, on useful things that you can do as an educator to be able to respond to some of the conflicts around control or decision making? What are some things that you find really useful in your environment?
Well, I think the first thing is when you go in, you don't solve the problem.
Yes.
It's very easy to just go in and say, well, you just need to stop bossing everybody around and give everyone a go. That's why they're arcing up and that's why everyone's
Yeah.
cranky. But
And that's so you're right. It doesn't solve the problem, doesn't it? Because that person that has been leading the show, whether they are realizing it or not, feels as though they're in trouble or on in being attacked, and it doesn't actually bring that collaborative nature of play back together, does it? So what do you do?
so the biggest thing is you have to go in and model the words that you need to share with the child so that the next time they're in this situation, they
Yeah.
can think back, being reflective, and go, well, last time Joss came
Mm-hmm.
in and said, oh, I I wasn't hearing what my friends were saying. So you're going in and you just nice and calm, and you're
Yes.
narrating to them
Yep.
what you're seeing. So you
Yeah.
might say, "Oh, Sam, I can see you've got some really great ideas, but you seem to just want to do your ideas. And I can see over here that Ben also has some ideas, but he's not really getting a turn at practicing those ideas. And
Yeah.
I can see that neither of you are very happy with each other
Yep.
at the
Yep.
moment. Why do you think Ben might be feeling a bit unhappy, Sam? And start getting them to think about putting themselves in the other person's perspective. And sometimes you do have to be quite direct and say, well, if you were trying to play with Ben and he was just telling you what to do all the time and not listening to your ideas, how do you think that would make you feel? And usually they can hit the nail on the head. Like
Yeah. Oh,
once
yes.
they're sort of that 3.5 up, they can tell you word for word exactly why their friend is feeling the way that they are, because
Yeah.
that's the way that they would feel. So getting them to think about it from their own perspective, if they were the other person, usually you can then find some middle ground and go,
Mm.
well, how do you think we could move forward so that you're both enjoying playing with each other again? And,
Yeah.
you know,
And I love that you're mentioning. I love when you first said that you're coming in with the calm presence, because that's like, oh, the lifeline we needed.
yeah,
And I also love the fact that you're providing that neutrality, aren't you, in that space where the power scales might have been uneven, but you're coming in as literally somebody that can hold space for the people
yeah,
that are in this situation. And I think that's actually such a relief for almost all children involved.
yeah,
Most children love the fact that you've been able to stop and pause what's going on
yeah,
and be able to calm down a little bit. It's really hard to negotiate when your emotions are heightening. So I love that you said that. And I also love the fact that you said you're both not looking very happy. And often that is the case. And they're like, yeah, I'm not happy about this, but these were my ideas. And it does give that alternate view, doesn't it?
yeah. Yeah, and I think that's it. Like you have to approach the situation and realize that neither child has the tools that they need
Yes,
right in that moment. So
that's
they're
right.
just on this runaway train. So if you
Yeah.
come in and add more fuel on that
Yeah.
fire, nobody's walking away with a
No,
resolution that
no.
anybody's going to be satisfied with.
No,
And
and
you know,
it leaves that almost that negative connotation to that play experience, doesn't it? Whereas I love it that you said children do remember, and they remember last time this happened with
yeah,
this equipment or in this space with these friends. Children are really competent and capable to recall. And so I love that you were talking about narrating and role modeling. And I think sometimes children are so observant, well, all the time, they're so observant of what we're doing in the space that your engagement to give an alternative viewpoint or perspective is, it's literally music to children's ears, isn't it?
yeah, and I think too in today's environment, we're seeing a lot more children who don't necessarily have a lot of skills at imaginative and creative play.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
last thing that we want to do is
Mm.
come in and make
Shut that down.
any
Yeah.
attempt at
Yeah.
creative dramatic play a negative experience, because
Absolutely.
that's where we're driving their identity from. So
Yeah.
we want to give them the tools to be able to further those skills, because that's what's
Absolutely.
going to make them successful citizens in life. So,
I love it. I
we
could chat to you all day, really. It's true though, Joss, isn't it? We're
it
talking about
is.
children as active change makers and citizens now, which means that, you know, we've really got to nurture this space. And I'm wondering what I I know that, and I can tell by the way that you think about your environment and the respect that you give the children in that space. What thinking do you like? What are some particular things about the way that you set up your environment
Yeah.
to influence or to, I guess, to mitigate some of these challenges arising? Is there some key
Yeah.
things that you do when you're setting up your space that you're mindful of?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things is making sure you have enough resources.
You were going to say that, yeah.
So sharing is really hard when you're a little
Yes,
person.
yes.
And if you really, really want something and someone else has got it, that's the quickest way that you're going to get a ruckus happening and people offside and no collaboration happening whatsoever.
Absolutely.
So you need to make sure that your activities have enough resources for everybody to participate at the same time.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
also looking at what resources you do present for children as invitations. Open-ended is your friend because open-ended can become anything.
Yes.
So, yeah. So that way, if a child has an
Absolutely.
idea in a play scenario, they can grab something off the shelf and all of a sudden your playboard is a shield, or
Yes.
your wooden rainbow arches, they're a house or a cave,
I
or
know.
you know
Yes. It
so
makes a massive difference, doesn't it?
it really
Particularly if
does.
you're trying to feed your baby or your dinosaurs are trying to have a picnic and there's only so many, single use items. A
Yeah,
pine cone can be a wonderful chocolate cake or
yeah,
I frequent the recycled fat reverse art truck here in Melbourne. And just open-ended resources, recycled and natural, make life
yeah.
easier, doesn't
They
and
they certainly do.
I love
And
the fact that when you're setting up your spaces, would I be right in assuming that I can tell by the way that you were talking about how you help children dissolve some of the conflict and heated emotions? It sounds to me like you're quite respectful too in the way that you offer. It's almost like you're asking whether or not your suggestion or some alternatives is okay. I
yeah,
think
and
I can you
I
talk a bit
think,
about that?
yeah, like retreat spaces are definitely a big one for early childhood, because sometimes they're just at the point they can't deal with anything more at the moment. They need
Yeah.
to just hit pause,
Yeah.
walk away, and just simmer down. If they
Yeah.
invite you to share that time with them, that's fine, but it's
Yeah.
also okay for them to say, I need some personal space. I just want to be alone right now. And I'm a
Absolutely.
really, really big advocate for children when I'm hearing in the playground, well, I don't want to be your best friend anymore. We're getting a little bit of that over the last couple of weeks when you're navigating new combinations of kids and friendships and that. Being able to say, well, it's okay to tell that person, I just want to play by myself for a little
Yeah.
bit. You
Yeah.
don't always have to be playing with somebody else, and we respect
Absolutely.
others by giving them the space that they need when they're not ready to play with us. So we
I love
don't have to
that.
use words that push people away. We don't have to use our
Yeah.
harsh words. We
Yeah.
can just say what we need, and
Yeah.
other people need to respect that.
I
So,
love just
yeah,
I need a moment and I can maybe revisit this. Really what we're saying is sometimes, diffusing. However, I love it that you say what's available in the space, whether it be resources or quiet time. I can tell, and I haven't even seen your space, but I can tell that the what you're affording children through experience and opportunity includes that active, engaged play, but also, which we know as adults is so important, to be able to start to cue into when you think you might need that space on your own.
Yeah, well, we as adults, sometimes we just want to go in to our room, shut the door, and just go, just nobody talk to me for 10 minutes.
Absolutely. And yet
So,
you're right. There is lots of
yeah,
expectations in some environments that children should
yeah,
always be in busy environments
yeah.
and happy. And
Yeah,
I
and
think,
that's it. So if you're going into a situation and you're doing the narrating and different perspectives, and you can see that that child is just not, they're not coming back with anything, they're not willing to move, I just ask them, do you think you need to just take a little bit of time to have a
yeah,
think?
yeah,
And like we have like I've got one of those couches that we can convert into caves and
yeah,
hiding spaces
yeah.
and things like that, and I'll just ask them, do you want me to make a cave for you for a few minutes, and you can just have some quiet time? And more
Brilliant.
often than not, they just want to go in there for 5 minutes. I've got a little cover that can go over the front, and I just say, oh, Sam just needs some personal space, so we're just going to let Sam stay in that cave by himself for a few minutes, and he's going to come out when he's ready.
I love
So
this. And again, as I said, I could talk to you all day, but for us to come to the conclusion of this session, what we finished on is almost what we started on, that collaborative nature of this is what we need as individuals within our
yeah,
collaborative space, and that's okay. And we're trying to give everybody what they need.
yeah. Because
And I
at the
think
end of the
that's
day,
super
that's
important.
what leadership is about, is making sure everybody has the tools they need to
Yeah,
succeed at the time that they need them.
that's what the
So
power in the play is, isn't it?
yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Joss. I can't thank you enough for the time that you've spent and your wisdom. I want to come and visit your space now.
You're very welcome, and I love talking about early childhood. I can spend hours doing
Me
it.
too. Me too. I think they might. All right. So just moving back into that space of our powerful role in, I guess, being able to ignite really rich learning opportunities in our spaces when play is evident all the time, and that platform for respectful relationships is something that we can keep at the forefront of our thinking, and the way we view children's play, the way we hear it. We have to check in with our own bias, because what we think is okay or how we were brought up is different to what our role looks like in a professional context. And so we need to tap in to what's going on in the world. And so when we're using play as a powerful platform for respectful relationships, it's important that we recognize, we know that violence in society is at a ridiculous high level. We know that violence against women and children is just continuously becoming a problem. So what we can actually tap into is some amazing resources. If you haven't gone on to ourwatch.org.au, I really encourage you to do that, because it gives you an opportunity to access a Change the Story series. It's a shared framework that we can use to give us better insight and knowledge for the primary prevention work of violence against women and children. And so when we know that in Australia, the four key drivers are condoning of violence against women, you might see lots of advertisements at the moment about being an upstander and calling people out when they're using inappropriate language and attitudes towards women. Driver 2 is men having control of decision making and limiting women's independence. And so some of these things you can start to notice in a very diluted version, but can still be very evident in children's play. Making decisions about what children can and can't do is certainly aligning with some of these drivers. We're talking about people, human drivers. And we are not excluding our youngest of citizens because they come into our spaces, as I said, with understanding and values and certain biases about what is possible in society. So what's possible for women and girls and what's possible for men. You may hear it in the identities children take up in play. You might see it in the negotiating and the dominance over resources, or what people are and are not allowed to do in play scenarios. Driver 3 is rigid gender stereotyping and dominant forms of masculinity. So who is being the doctor? Who is the fireman? Who's driving the truck in the play? Is it always a man or is it always a boy? Thinking about that. It also gives us an opportunity to open up that space for gender equity. And so we're not just talking about the binary of male and female. We're talking about people. Could we just be a person driving the truck? We're also looking at driver 4 here, male peer relations and cultures of masculinity that emphasize aggression, dominance, and control. So years ago, we used to call it pack play. We no longer use that term, obviously, but we're looking at why are certain people gathering together, certain genders perhaps gathering together, and what's the narrative? And what are the actions and the responses that children are showing us in their play? Really important to consider. So we know, and we've talked about the fact that play is dynamic and at times, it can also be quite explosive. So I guess what we're doing is being really mindful of how we can recognize that behavior represents underlying emotional states and relationship needs, social interaction needs. Sometimes it might be an individual's needs that they have been so social that they actually need to actually have a break and have a break from the social pressure and intensity that play can involve. So we're separating identity from behavior. Yeah. Jimmy always hits. Jimmy always hits when he doesn't get the shovel in the sandpit. We're looking at not giving Jimmy the hits identity. What we're looking at is, hang on, let's stop and diffuse this. What are we looking at here? We're looking at sometimes Jimmy gets really frustrated or responds in a way that perhaps isn't so fair. But I think Jimmy's looking really frustrated. And how can we all together help solve this? This is where we actually use collaborative, collective brainstorming. How can we fix this? How can we help Jimmy to feel more secure in the play space? Are there other tools that we can use? Have we got more shovels? How else? What else can we bring to the table to be able to diffuse and keep Jimmy more comfortable so he doesn't go out of his window of capacity, whilst at the same time, how can we as a collective help to make Jimmy more comfortable in this space so it doesn't get to the point where he hits? So we're really looking at prioritizing safety and connection in stressful or emotionally charged moments. Ultimately, if we're using a trauma-informed response, sometimes certain feelings will give children an instant reaction to an event. So they might feel like this is all that they control in their life. This shovel is the only thing that Jimmy feels like he has to hold on to for dear life right now, because everything else in his life, he doesn't have much agency over. So how can we expand Jimmy's opportunity to have agency in our space? Fight, flight, or fear responses or behaviours often occur. We want to regulate first. There is no point trying to reason with Jimmy and the others until we've regulated. So we need to think about safety. We need to think about our own, the individual, and the other people's safety. We're regulating first. We can be really influential, as I said earlier here, where we're coming in with the calmest nervous system possible to hold space for children. We're actually then able to utilize, and this is where that attunement about what is going on for individual children and what they enjoy, what brings them to a more calmer state, are those things readily available, even without asking? Because the reality is, if Jimmy is at the point where he is hitting people with the shovel, he's probably not going to be able to verbally ask you to get the squeegee toy or the comfy blanket. So how readily available are the things that you know will keep Jimmy feeling a little better than rougher? Regulating first, then we're relating. I'm really sorry that you felt so angry over there, Jimmy. I am sorry for that. The space, essentially, is what has let him down. So we want to actually then, that's the point then when everybody is regulated, we've been able to get calm, relate, acknowledge, recognize the feelings, and then we can do some of that negotiating, reasoning, ideas, collaboration. Multimodally, though, not just talking. Attending to your own needs for regulation and support to offer a calm, steady presence and emotional availability is super important. So when we co-regulate, we can offer a soft gaze. We can offer a soft gaze to keep connection to children, even if they're not right beside us. That soft gaze is something that really, those little moments of connection can help children feel safe and secure in their space, keep them within their window of capacity. Close proximity, yes. Consensual hugs, yes. Open body language, rather than walking over with our hands on our hips or our arms crossed, or feeling like we are really big people in the space because there's a lot of chaos going on. We want to actually have open, calm body language where we can lean in with curiosity and be available, or just position some of those comfort things in clear view. Listening, attunement, a gentle tone of voice, and warmth. Smiling, even if you don't feel like smiling at that moment, makes a massive difference to your behavioural landscape. So accepting no and disappointment is huge in society. We have many adults that do not know how to accept no. We have many teenagers, young people, and of course children that do not know how to accept no. And this is where consent comes in, and respect for other people's boundaries setting. This is when we're relating. In that previous screen, I was talking about regulate and then relate. This is that part where we say, I know this is so hard for you. Excuse me. We don't want to brush over big emotions. We want children to recognize how their bodies are feeling, and that feeling angry, sad, frustrated is normal. It is life. We're not expecting everybody to be in the green calm zone all day. What we are saying is, I recognize that this is hard for you, but I can help you. I want to help you. I am here to help you. I am available. That's where all your co-regulation techniques come in, to give him not just the verbal language, because remember, if that prefrontal cortex has lifted, he may not be able to hear and comprehend what you're saying just yet until his body gets calm, which is why our physical presence is super important. So you can mirror that to Jimmy. We're modeling empathy here when we're saying, I know this is so hard for you. It is so hard when you get disappointed. It's so hard when you're hoping to get something. I felt like that too, Jimmy. You know, I was hoping to go and get, the last cupcake at the tray at the party, and there wasn't any left. I was so disappointed. Where you can actually relate to the feelings of disappointment, things that don't feel fair. It gives children that human understanding that sometimes things don't work out how we'd hoped. So we're able to then so we're regulating, we're relate in the reason, we're able to advocate and show Jimmy how to advocate for himself and others. It might be that we talk about how many shovels there are. Jimmy, I wonder, I know you always love the yellow shovel, and I know that's your absolute most favourite, but could we have a look together in the shed to see if there's some other types of shovels? Or maybe we could pick out some, and we could, it might be that I go to Bunnings and I get another type of shovel, or, the op shop or whatever it is, if we don't have excess resources. But I guess what we want to do is give Jimmy an opportunity to be able to raise his ability to hear alternate possibilities and have agency and control, because that's what's ultimately upset him. He feels like he's lost control and he's lost his sense of power in his space. So when we're actually rewinding that back, what other alternatives are there for you to feel in control, for you to feel like you can hold on to something that is valuable to you? So we're giving a repertoire of examples and strategies for Jimmy to recall. And that might be that we create visuals for Jimmy to think of what alternatives are available. And when you are angry and when you are frustrated, we need to make sure that we have that menu of opportunities. It might be that Jimmy loves to punch the punching bag that's hanging from a tree or wherever else. It might be jumping on a trampet. It might be going and hiding in the teepee tent with the cozy cushions and read a book. Whatever it is that individuals need in your space, visuals of these self-care well-being options are a good tool for you to use with them, so eventually they can then go and access on their own. But having these readily available is essential parts of our curriculum planning. So it's safe ways to diffuse anger. We're not stifling the anger. We're saying, I understand you're angry. Let's work out ways that you can safely shift that energy through your body. And that's nervous system care. I noticed I can't see what the comments are. Yeah, I can see some raised hands. I promise you, I will make sure I stop so you can ask some questions. Absolutely. Do not panic. You are more than welcome to write them in the chat, and I will have a look at question time. So do not panic. I promise you we will do that, and I will put on that video, and hopefully for those of you that want to watch it, you can. Otherwise, as I said, make sure you get the link for it. So a family daycare educator example here. This was from the National Quality Standard Professional Learning Program newsletter. Building a strong and positive relationship with each child is what matters most. Janini, the family daycare educator, was interviewed and said that, I know that if they trust me, the children, and they feel happy and secure with me, then they will learn with me. My relationship creates a situation where children pay attention to what I do and what I say, and so they learn about themselves and about how to get along with other people. I know that showing that I value them contributes to their sense of identity and also teaches them about how to interact with others. So in your service, I want you to just pause for a moment here and think about, how do you teach children about respectful leadership? Because we don't want to stifle those children that are driving play. That's, leadership qualities are super important. We want everybody to be able to champion their ideas and sometimes lead others. That's life, and that's a great skill to have. But how do we teach children about respectful leadership, fairness when you're leading, fairness when you're coming up with ideas, checking that everybody seems okay with it? And that's where, again, you might come in and go, oh my gosh, this is great organizing over here. I love that you guys are collecting all things for your cafe. Wow, I love it that you thought, whose idea was this? Great. Whose idea was this? Fantastic. Who thought of doing that? I love that idea. Have you contributed? Do you want to? So we're really thinking about our feedback. And that feedback loop is really important. So if that play does end up getting to a point where the power imbalance is present and children are becoming unsettled in the space, if we've been able to go in and hold space and offer possible alternatives and everybody's happy to resume the play, They've literally pushed that play button again. It's super important that we stay connected and feedback loop. So you go back and check in. When I'm in spaces, often observing educators in the space, there'll be an interaction or with children and the play's happy, and so then they move on and go about their play. But sometimes, fairly rapidly, often, it will diffuse again, the cohesion. And so you need to make sure that you check in how the new plan's going. How are we going? Was that a great solution, or do we still need to think of some other ways that everybody can feel happy here? I don't know. I heard or I noticed some people weren't feeling that okay. Are you sure we're okay with this plan? Do we need more resources? Okay, I'm just over here. I can see. Let me know if you need a hand with some ideas again. I am more than happy to help. So that way we are coming back and finishing that feedback loop. That check-in is vital in this moment, because we can't assume everything is going to be smooth sailing after the one moment of halting the play. I see some hearts. You guys are beautiful. What are some indicators that help you distinguish between leadership and dominance in play sequences? Some things that you might notice here. What strategies do you find useful for responding to children's conflicts around control or decision making? I wonder if many of you do use that, thinking about your own behavioral landscape and what does your body language and what does your tone of voice sound like? And do you position yourself at a really neutral space in the play? We're not standing up and over the play people. So I'm wondering what strategies you use. We also use intentionality, I know, with our resources and the way that we position furniture, equipment, so that we can best re-navigate the space, position ourselves. And I'm wondering whether you co-create spaces with children. I'm sure you do, where you start to say, I wonder if we put this here. What are your thoughts on that? Or where do you think we should put that? I know you all would be doing that. I also think it's really important to think about that role modeling of social safety, where you're saying, do you know what? I love it that you guys want to play with, I don't know, the fridge and the home corner, but can we think about a different spot for it, because it's really tricky for me to see over that, and I need to be able to see you in case you need to let me know that you need a hand, or I need to be able to still hear you, and that makes it a bit tricky. So could we together think of a different way that we can position that fridge so that it means that you're safe and you can see me if you need to? Because I want to be able to see what's going on if you need help. So children are constantly realizing that we're there as a safe person for support. And we want them to know that visibility is for them as much as it is for us. So how does your environment then set up and influence power dynamics in play? No doubt you have multiples of equipment, busy areas. I was just mentoring two different educators in two different centres today, same organisation though, and we've been talking about watching where children gravitate to and why, and the areas that they don't tend to utilise and why, and whether or not we can attract and disperse some of the really busy not chaotic, but really busy areas that often end up with social conflict. So we're looking at how we can disperse children in the space and engage and sustain the play a little longer with certain resources. And I think that's really important when we're thinking about power in play. We need nooks, and we need to think about what the people are doing in the space with the resources, and see if we can actually notice some patterns that are happening so that we can diffuse some of that. All right. So as I promised you, a whole lot of references and further information. I am going to stop the share I'm going to bring you up to, all right, let's have a look. Question and answers. No, nothing in that, but I can see heaps in the chat. Oh, lots of thank yous. Aren't you guys beautiful? I love coming to these sessions. Make sure in your survey you tell them that you want me back, because I think you guys are just divine. You are so engaged and responsive. There's like 659 of you. I am so grateful that you took the time out of your really busy, hardworking weeks to spend time with me. I really do appreciate it. And I'm glad that you have loved the session by all of this. This is amazing. Now, let me just see whether or not there are any questions that I can answer. Oh, thumbs up. Thank you. Great. I love that you guys are talking to each other and commenting as I was going through. So responsive. Thought-provoking, I'm glad. Okay. You are more than welcome, team. Can you please post the page of the resources? It disappeared too fast. Oh, yes, of course. In the booklet, it'll be in there. And I'm going to make sure that we get you that link. Please, more training about children's play and behaviour. Yep, of course. Yep, feed that back in your survey. Oh, Carol, hi. I'd love part 2 to this, where educator responses can impact positive or negatively a child's ability to advocate. Yeah, absolutely, Carol. That would be a really good part 2. You're absolutely right. So really thinking about the impact that we can have if we respond in a certain way. Yeah, interesting. I was just writing a piece on dynamic supervision for Early Childhood Australia, and I was talking about the impacts of a reaction as opposed to a response. So, yeah, great. I think that's a great idea. Oh, my passion, listening to my passion and love for children. I absolutely do. Okay, well, you beautiful people, I don't think you've got any questions. No. Yeah, just the references. Yep. So in the booklet, they will definitely be in there. And if you have any trouble accessing anything, reach out to Peak or reach out to me. I'm all over the socials. You guys are absolutely such a responsive, hardworking, super important, valuable group in our sector. And I love doing sessions with you. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for participating in this episode of PD in Your Pocket. This series was produced on the lands of the Wangal and Gadigal peoples. If you'd like to watch or listen to other episodes in this series, or find out more information about this program, you can find us at our website at nswfdc.org.au/PD in Your Pocket.